I'm here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we're at my mom's house. This is my mom, Margie,
Hi.
and this is the house I grew up in. And so the other day, I was sharing a photo of me base jumping on social media through Instagram, actually, and a woman commented and said, "Your poor mother." And I responded with something like, "Oh, well, my mother's doing pretty well. She's actually coming to watch me at Bridge Day a week from now, this weekend." And so it still kept me thinking, and I was like, okay, well, maybe it'd be good to interview my mom and kind of get her perspective on things because I don't honestly know exactly what she goes through considering like me, her son, as a base jumper and stuff. So I thought about it a little bit on my drive from Twin Falls, Idaho, where I live now, back to Indiana. Um, and I thought this would be a good conversation to have and to share with everybody. Uh, so my brain's scrambled. Um, a little backstory about me. I was 2 weeks old when my dad passed, so my mother raised me as a single parent. She never remarried. Had very few relationships in her life that I um, knew the person, and so she raised me her whole life. And since I was young, I grew up in being put in about every sport possible. Um, and two from the beginning were extreme sports. Skateboarding and snowboarding were two of my first real passions that I actively did throughout my whole childhood, it seems, and into my teenage and still current years to this day. And so it started with that, where like I traveled a lot for both of these things, and they weren't so risky. Uh, Now, as I gotten older, I've continued with extreme sports, and now I'm a base jumper. And so, thinking back to my skydive, when I first started skydiving, and then ended up getting into base shortly after, um, how did you feel as far as is knowing what I was doing and kind of like the risk involved, and how did you feel at that initial time period when it was still new to you, new to me, um, and how did you feel about that at the time?
Well, back then, skydiving was all that's really around in this area. I mean, base jumping I never even heard of back then.
You have a friend that's a skydiver, Mark, too.
Right, yeah. So, and I even took training for skydiving, but then never did end up jumping because of circumstances. Anyway, so that wasn't anything. I never dreamed that it would evolve to what it has in Austin's life. Since it's not, like I said, in the area we live in, it's just not anything anybody really does. There's nothing structurally to jump off of around here. So it was once he started the base jumping, he went to a training out in Idaho, and that's when it became a little scarier. Didn't really know so much until he actually got in an accident. Then there was really stress really began because then you realize just how anything could happen at any moment. So
Well, you mentioned my accident, and that's something I was going to get to here in a moment, but I want to clarify. So, like, before that, your initial thoughts on me entering base were kind of unknown at the time, but you still had worries and stuff. Um, is that accurate?
Oh yeah. Well, as a mother and parent, I think you worry about anything with your child. You constantly are hopeful that nothing happens, but yeah, it's very stressful. Or I create stress, I guess, in my own mind. Not having a support group for all the things that Austin eventually got involved in, but anyway, you just deal with it. And but yes, it's very stressful thinking about the outcomes that could happen, especially your father dying, suddenly from an accident, and getting that first call when you did get in an accident. So yeah, create a lot of stress in my
So
life.
let's go on to the accident. So um, every mother's worst nightmare, or like basically everything that you're talking about, worst case scenario came true. You received a phone call or a text or something from the hospital or people, the medics, after I was airlifted when I was in a base jumping accident in Twin Falls, Idaho, in 2014 with a friend, and she was contacted, and so you got that phone call that no mother wants to hear. And so can you kind of tell me about how you felt in that moment when you first received the phone call, and then kind of like how you dealt with what followed after that?
Yeah, of course, just you're in shock, but you go into survival mode, so to speak. I had to quickly get plane tickets to fly where he was being airlifted to, and all the stuff, organize my things with my helpful neighbors to take care of, that I was going to be gone. So you just go into survival. You're in shock. Of course, unfortunately, on my plane ride out to Idaho, I sat next to a minister, and that was like meant to be. So he was very helpful. And I don't know, you just go into that mode, or that's how my upbringing was. You take care of things and you go and deal with it. But yeah, I was surprised when I got there he hadn't even gone into surgery yet, but was in a lot of pain, so.
So you got that phone call, you came out, and then like with everything that followed through my rehabilitation, you were a huge part in being there for me supportively and everything. And so you dealt with a lot of my poor response to the injury, my aggression and anger at myself that I directed to family members. And so through my rehabilitation process, how did you manage with dealing with that, with dealing with me, this new injury? I was in a wheelchair for some time, not knowing that I might ever get out of the wheelchair, and so there was a lot of uncertainty in my injury, and fortunately things worked out in the end. But at this time, it was all unknown, and so how, how what was your feelings at this time, and kind of like the feeling for the future?
Yeah, it was all scary. We were out there like 3.5 months, and yeah, you were in such pain. So it was stressful. Luckily, I have a great support system and family and friends that were with for me and supporting me at a distance. A few were able to come out, but this is all about your poor mother, and it's very stressful. Us, and probably doesn't realize how much, because he was in pain himself, so he wouldn't even be thinking of that. So I lived next door to the hospital at a hotel for that time, and it's all over now, so it's easy to look back and think of the outcome has become good because of loss in motivation, because that really was supposed to be in a wheelchair the rest of his life. But I can't, it did affect my health because I have Crohn's disease, and stress is like the worst thing to affect that. But I survived, and we've moved on, and he's continued in his passion and other extreme sports that are even more stressful than the base jumping. But I don't know. It's just support from friends and family that helps.
So that was the first. That was about a year into my base career or so in 2014 when I got in that accident. And it didn't stop there, so I recovered enough to start base jumping again, and I got back into it as soon as possible. And then not long after that, maybe just 2 years after my accident, I was in Yosemite National Park, and ended up landing my parachute in a tree, and then after getting down was arrested. And so as I'm climbing down this tree, I took a moment knowing that I was going to get arrested to call my mom and tell her that I was hung up in a tree and I was going to be arrested. And so phone call number two of how to worry your mother to death. I was in the tree and let her know that I was getting arrested, and actually I recall her reminding me calmly to just be polite to the rangers, the arresting rangers, and um, I was. Um, it gave me a lot of comfort hearing her voice and her calmly doing what mothers do best, telling their sons what they should do to keep as much out of trouble as possible. So, phone call number 2, getting arrested, and so this time different related stress, but also many parents might go through this with their children base jumping because many jumps that we do are illegal, unfortunately. And so, how did you feel this time? So the accident's over. Now I'm recovering, and now I get arrested, and I'm going to jail in Yosemite National Park.
Well, the first thing was the relief that you were not actually injured and that you were okay. Unfortunately, that you were going to be caught at something you shouldn't have been doing. But then we go into the different type of stress, and that's something that I was always kind of brought up in because of a few different instances in Austin's younger days. The last thing I ever want to do is get involved with lawyers and the legal system, and so I pretty much lead a clean life because I know the stress of and the money that you pay out and the long-term time it takes to resolve these type of things. So it's a new stress. It's a stress with all those things, and everything, of course, at this point anymore is so long distance. It's not that he's right here in the same town anymore. He's coming and going, so it's even harder when you're so far away so it's all stressful to me. Maybe some people, they have husbands or somebody there that help get them through it, but we survived, and eventually it will be a thing of the past. But honestly, it is stressful. Anything doing with the legal system too. Medical and legal are not two things you want to avoid in your life, in my opinion.
So after all that, starting with the injury, then getting arrested, and then last year was the first year that my mom actually watched me make a base jump live in person, and that was at Bridge Day last year. I'm wearing the shirt from there. And so, going through all this that I put you through with the arrest and the accident and stuff, then now you actually get to physically be there and watch me in person jump in front of a crowd off of the New River Gorge Bridge. And what were your thoughts of that event, and how did you feel about seeing me base jump in person?
Well, that was much easier. I probably had a little anxiety going into the thought of going there and seeing you for the first time, but actually before I ever saw you personally jump, because it was very crowded, it was such an organized, and they had very safety minded crews on hand for emergency, and all that was definitely eased my mind, and so many others were doing it, and it's a realization of how big of a sport this is for that group that are into it. That was all actually it was a better thing to see under those circumstances. Now, say it's just him jumping by himself, now that would be more stressful to me, but being in this situation, the organized Bridge Day Festival, and having all that safety precautions that they do definitely eased it. So, and it was very fun and very interesting and amazing to watch all these jumpers jump off this bridge, and people coming down the river too, and repellers like little specks up there coming down their line. So it was all fun, actually.
So we'll go back to what all started this interview, the comment that this woman made of your poor mother. So now we've talked about a few things, from my accident, arrest, to being at Bridge Day last year. When you think of someone that says your poor mother, do you think that's accurate to say, like, in regards to you and how you feel and what I do to you by base jumping?
Oh, definitely, yeah. it's once you have kids, which you don't have any yet, but then I guess that's when you really understand it more. But yeah, it's just hard. Anything that you can't control the outcome is, it's hard. So yeah, the poor mother and poor fathers, if there are, I think men handle it easier, but I can understand why she would say that, because, I've thought that a few times, or my friends, I'm sure, think it, but they also admire Austin's ambition and what he does, so.
So when you mention your friends, it makes me think of something we've talked about before, but I know for me personally, as a base jumper, and I've lived in uh, many different areas around the U.S. and the world where I'm interacting with people that aren't jumpers, and then I'm interacting with people that are jumpers, and there's definitely a big difference when you can communicate with someone that knows specifically like what you're talking about and can relate because they're also a jumper, and then compared to people that don't necessarily know exactly. And so what I'm getting at is when these instances occurred for me and then for my mom, she mentioned that she didn't really have anybody to talk to because it's kind of an unrelatable situation for her friends because they don't have children that do stuff like I do. She's kind of one in a million amongst most of the people around this state where we live in Indiana. And so could you briefly explain that and kind of like, so the difficulty of when you're trying to discuss with friends kind of what's going on with me and stuff? And
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, there's just nobody I can talk to around here that can relate in that sense, because yes, they don't have, like you said, their kids aren't doing this extreme sport. So if you are out there and you are a single person that has a child doing some kind of extreme sport and you got any advice, please, through Austin, I'd love to hear from you and see how you handle it.
so what is like in the past when you've tried to talk to your friends, they're just without children or without children that partake in extreme sports, how does the conversation kind of go when you're trying to talk more deeply about issues revolving me and my sport, and how do those conversations go?
Which usually is, how do you handle it? Oh, I don't know. Especially if I show them a video of it, of Austin, it's like, but, like they all say, but they all admire him for his passion and his motivation from going to never walking again to the point he is physically. So, but yeah, they're just kind of like, oh, I can't believe it, I can't believe, how do you survive that? But
So you don't really get the feedback that you want or the response that would help you, say as if you were speaking with someone that could relate, like another parent of a jumper.
right, yeah, they don't know what to tell me, and I understand that. I mean, I don't even know. It's something you never had to deal with, so it's all new territory. Of course, this has been going on for a while, so it's like not new right this moment, but I just keep myself very busy working, and that is my mental health. Is I'm kind of from a family of workaholics, so I enjoy it, so I do it, and that keeps my mind off to what Austin's up to, and that's probably my survival mode for it.
So my mom and I discussed this, and we would like to express that she's interested to speak with any parents of base jumpers. And so if you're a parent of a base jumper and you can you understand what my mom's talking about here with the aspect of friends that it's harder to relate to with when you're looking for like a deeper conversation or support for something that your child is doing, like myself. Please contact me. If you're a parent, please contact me if you'd like to reach out and talk to my mom. She's interested to to talk to more parents of jumpers, and I got a lot of really awesome friends. I'd be super excited for my mom to meet your parents. So if you're a parent and you'd like to meet my mother, please contact me, and she'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I don't do social media, so that's another way to deal with it. I don't have to view it. It helps.
So tomorrow I leave for West Virginia, and then which is Thursday, and so my mom will probably leave on Friday, I imagine. Or, anyways, we're going to Bridge Day, and so this will be the second year that my mom gets to watch me live in person jump from the New River Gorge Bridge, and I'm super excited. So, how do you feel going into it this year?
Like I said before, because it's so organized and it's a special day that they've been doing for 40 years, and that have all that safety precautions, it's much easier than the thought of you by yourself out somewhere jumping with no one around. So, no, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. I hope no one gets hurt in any way, and it's fun to watch all these guys and girls jumping off the bridge. It is a big deal there for that few hours, and yeah, looking forward to it.
So, one thing I want to get back to real quick before I finish up with the last question. Um, when I was arrested, I was living in California. Uh, and then after that, I moved to Wyoming, where I continued to base jump, but in a more remote mountain environment. And nowadays, I live in Twin Falls, where I can legally base jump all day, every day, and I try to as much as I want and can. Um, so, how is things varied? So, like when I was in Wyoming, it was a little bit of a different experience as far as base goes, and now Twin Falls, where it's different as well and more accepted and amongst the community for a long time. How did you feel when I was in Wyoming jumping?
Oh, well, Wyoming, that was because you moved there and just lived by yourself, didn't really know anybody or have friends, went out and climbed these mountains and did stuff all by yourself. So yeah, that was very worrisome with not knowing, since we're not from there, they have they have bears and all this different animal life that we don't have around here. So I wouldn't be familiar. So I feared all those things for my son, knowing that he hasn't grown up around that either. So yeah, I'm relieved that he's moved his place now that he's staying, because he pretty much just lives everywhere in his van. So I'm relieved, because at least Twin Falls, it's legal to jump off that bridge. There's other people around. That helps. That helps a lot to know that he's got people around that he knows, not by himself.
All right, well, that's kind of coming to the end of the interview as far as all the questions I have to ask. One last question. Do you have any advice for other mothers and fathers of base jumpers as far as how to deal with things or anything at all? Is there anything that you could...
No, I'm hoping they give me some advice, actually. No, I don't have any specific advice. I'm sure they probably...
Is there anything you could say about accepting what I do, and although it brings you stress, like, do you still wish that, like, I do what I want with my life, or do you wish that I would settle down, or is there something you could say along those lines?
Oh. Well, that's one thing I have learned, that I can't... It's your life now, so I can't really control it, or it's what you like. It's not what I would be doing, or maybe I would if I'd have been your age in an area that was something that was done. But, no, I've learned to accept that I can't control that. So, yeah, whatever you're doing, I hope the best outcome in your life, and that you pursue your dreams, and at some point it actually becomes something that you can prosper at. And I sorry to say that, I think of how I was at your age, and and how much I've changed over the years. So whether this is something you do your whole life, I don't know. A lot of people start out with things, and as their life goes on, they change. So we'll see what happens. I hope you're around for all of my life, and nothing else happens, no accidents, of course. But no, I'm not trying to change you and control your passions and motivations or ambitions. So you're on your own, bud. Well, I'm there for you. If some, I'm always here for him. It's just I'm learning not to even vent my thoughts.
So with, you said learning through this whole life I've lived, have I helped you help you learn anything? Have you gained anything positive that you know is directly attributed to what I've done with my life and through base jumping and other extreme activities? Has anything positive come for you out of these?
Can't think of anything right now. Sorry. Didn't know that. Think of that question. Sorry.
So nothing.
Well,
nothing positive.
I just don't know anything right this minute. That's.
A lot of people come to the bridge, and we have a lot of people that really enjoy our company and come there specifically to kind of catch the vibe of jumpers, because it's unique for many ways, and people enjoy it. We're awesome humans to meet, and they seek out our group because they realize that we have something special amongst our community that not many others share so prevalently. And so
yeah, well, I definitely think you're awesome, and I'm glad that you have people there that are interested in, and yeah, it's just kind of a territorial thing. We don't live where that's at, but yeah, I'm glad for you. I'm glad there are people that are coming out and getting to know the jumpers. I'm just lost of what the real positive. It's not that, I don't know.
So
I can't think of
what could
anything
you say,
right
anything
now.
negative off the top of your head, like overwhelmingly negative that's come from this, that's like not just stress related, but like I wouldn't have this in my life if it wasn't for this, and I wish that were that way.
Oh, well, just the legal stuff, that's definitely something I really hate to be around anything like that.
All right, well, any last words before we wrap things up?
No, just that I love my son, and I hope he survives, and he's good at it, I know that, and he loves it, and I'll always be there for him. I might not be able to be out where he's pursuing all this with him, but I'm satisfied where I'm at, so he doesn't try to change me, I'll try to not change him.
Well, thanks, Mom. So, parents, if you'd like to reach out to my mother, please reach out to me and we'll get you guys in contact. She'd be happy to speak with you. So, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mom. See you all at Bridge Day.